Oh my gosh, Lindsay, what happened?
I made noises with my mouth.
You know what it made me think of?
What did it make you think of?
Of all the potential hazards RVers face in transit. Driving on the roads, the back roads, the front roads, the sideways roads, the left roads, the right roads, intersection, for crying out loud.
You need to stay off those side roads.
Okay.
But you're right. There's so many things that can go wrong, cause accidents when you are towing. And honestly, we don't want to scare you. No. We just want to point some of them out and make sure that you're being super duper safe on the road because we love you.
8 or 9, I don't know the exact figures, but 8 or 9 times out of 10, you have more and better adventures if you're not in the hospital.
8 or 9 times out of 10. That is true. I did. It's probably more like 9.5 times out of 10.
Depending on what they give you.
So let's talk about some safety on the road. It might not be the most fun, but we'll do the best we can to make it fun and keep you safe.
Welcome to the RV Small Talk Podcast, where we talk about. Welcome to the RV Small Talk Podcast, where we talk about lightweight trailers, truck campers, the people, places, and adventures that go right along with them. We are your hosts from Princess Craft RV. I'm Clint.
And I had coffee, so y'all better watch out.
That's right. And you're most of the way through it. Yeah. It's from a not so local chain.
With the windmill as a logo.
Right. My coffee today is from Nespresso, and the froth is from the Nespresso frother-nator thing. So I don't think that's what they call it.
Here's what happens. You guys, if you listen at all, you probably know that PJ and Clint are both a little obsessed with coffee. They like it different ways.
Yeah, I actually don't like it, but I like not liking it, so I have to keep on experiencing it.
You are insane. So we got a Nespresso machine specifically for our office. We are that bougie, and a personal frother. So now you can see PJ and Clint over there a couple times a day doing their little barista thing in the corner, and it's pretty adorable.
Yeah.
But PJ is not here during this podcast, so you're going to have to put up with us too, which is always fun. PJ keeps us in line, but right now she's doing businessy stuff. She is at...
It's called the Dealer Open House. It's in Elkhart every year, and it's where the manufacturers want to roll out all the newest, latest, greatest designs or changes to their units so that dealers can get an idea of what they're ordering for the next season. Maybe it's just some updates to some floor plans that they've had, or maybe it's completely new designs with new technology. So it's a big deal for dealerships to go up to Elkhart and see just as much as they can see and maybe put in some orders for the coming year.
And that means PJ is going to come back seeing everything new from all the manufacturers, have all the fun new stuff. So we are certainly going to do a podcast on the cool things that she sees up there and be looking out for that. It's always an exciting time. It's like an RV show, but for dealerships instead of customers. Yeah. We get to be the customers.
Which in the economic schematic of things, that's actually how it really works, is that the end buyer is certainly a customer of the manufacturer, but before that, the dealerships are customers. The dealerships have to buy the units to sell the units. In a way, it's not just a little oversimplified. There is some, flooring and charges and all that. But in an oversimplified way, the first customer of the manufacturer is the dealership, unless it's a direct to consumer model. Sorry. Hi.
Okay. Hi.
Okay. So our topic today is just, and I'm going to admit, I looked at a few articles on this online, and they all pretty much say the same thing in different words. And I did like this one particular article from RV Geeks, and their slogan is RV like a pro. So I did print off this article from RV Geeks, and I do believe it is a worthwhile resource to check out. We'll put a link to RV Geeks website in the show notes. So you may see me flipping through to jog my memory a little bit, because I looked at several. But anyways, how to avoid the most common RV accidents. Lindsay, what do you think are the most common RV accidents?
Well, I did not read the article because you always need two personalities on a podcast, right? Like one that knows what they're talking about and the other one that just blabs. So I'm here to be the blabber, but
Tret.
Sorry. Maybe the next one we can switch.
Sure. Okay.
But, I would think there's a lot of things. And I think that causes some anxiety for people who are new to towing. It definitely would give me some anxiety. Mm-hmm. So I know one thing that is very common in accidents is tired drivers. I think that, or I know that you want to go to your destination, right? Like you're so excited to go camping, you hitch up the trailer, you're ready to go. And the goal is to get there. Yeah. I think it's honestly not even to make this a sexist thing, but a lot of times it's guys who have that like, we can do it. We can drive overnight. We like, I can
there's a badge of honor.
There's like this manly thing to it, right?
It is. And I think there is just, there's something, I guess, in the DNA code that this is kind of how we're a bit wired. We have to be trained otherwise. I can
go further longer than my friend who did this last summer.
That or, you just lose sight of, I mean, you have a goal, very goal oriented. Your goal is to have the experience in the place, and you don't realize how great an experience it can be in between. Like there's micro experiences in between.
Are you telling me that it's not about the destination, it's about the journey?
It's about both.
Is that what you're saying to me right now? I've never heard that before.
Too much foam in my mustache.
So yes, being well rested is a really important part of travel. And we know you have a lot of ground to cover in a short amount of time, but
you only get so many days off,
right?
Or you're attending an event. You gotta get there.
You got to get there. But even small breaks can be very, very helpful because tired drivers is just another form of impairment.
Absolutely. And this is one thing, you're not going to hear anything in our list that we're going through that is just RVers, I don't believe. I think you're going to find that, well, that's all drivers. Absolutely. But as an RVer, we got typically bigger or taller or longer or heavier or any mix of those items, things going on, all at the same time. And, tired drivers, you say it's a form of impairment. 100%. As much as an impairment as being over the legal limit.
Yeah.
So
your brain is not functioning correctly.
Right.
So yeah, you do have a responsibility. Obviously, you're carrying something heavy behind you, and a swerve in a Toyota Camry, I'm tired and I kind of did a little swerve is very different than a swerve when you're pulling a trailer behind you, because sometimes that can't be corrected. I don't think anything we're going to say today is shocking either. Like it's all kind of course, this is not safe. Yeah. But putting them in a list like this can kind of help you get through like, okay, am I doing this safely?
Do you have any experiences of tired driving where you're like, oh, I just kind of came to my senses after a few miles and
I remembered I was driving?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's terrifying. Mm-hmm. It's terrifying. And especially that feeling of when you do kind of shock awake or, jolt into your being. And then that actually gives you a little bit of adrenaline. And your first thought is, oh, that was really scary. But
now I'm awake.
Now I'm awake because I scared the crap out of myself.
Don't do it.
Yeah, that is actually your body telling you to
stop.
Quit.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and this happens obviously to anyone driving anything, whether you're towing or not. I've definitely had this experience, and I think I'm finally, now that I'm, well established in my 40s, I'm finally getting wise enough to recognize it early.
Instead of
because I'll fully admit. I was
about to say you have some experience with tired driving.
Yeah. I've gone end over end in vehicles and through guardrails,
So do you remember the moment before that? Like, do you remember having a moment when you were like, I'm really tired, but I think I'm just going to push through?
Yeah.
Or having a moment where you said, I'm really tired, but I'm a dude. I can totally do this. I'm just going to keep going. I'm fine.
I think as a young man, you frame a lot of things. I wouldn't say everything, but you frame a lot of things as this could be epic. If I can say I drove through the night, it's part of the story I'm writing about this protagonist in my life that is just so happens to be egotistically me.
But the story definitely took a turn.
Yeah.
In your case, it did not work out well.
Well, okay. So this is a big digression, but okay. So I was in college and I was at school in San Marcos, Texas. My home was in Victoria, Texas, but I was going to do a summer Spanish immersion study class, whatever, in Central Mexico.
You know Spanish?
I knew more Spanish then than I know now.
Oh, okay.
It's definitely a use it or lose it thing. But I had to get out of my dorm room, and that the last day that I could get out of the dorm room and then get home with all my stuff and then be at the airport at some ungodly hour in the morning in Houston the next day. So I got home, I did my laundry, I repacked for the trip, and then I went to the bus station in Victoria to ride to Houston. But the Greyhound bus never showed up. So
you had to drive. So
I made the call because, my dad was like, I'll take you. And I was like, no, don't worry about it. And in my mind, in my dumb 20-year-old mind was, no, this is part of the epic experience. And I'm doing something for myself. I don't need help and all that. And so I hit the road, and it was dumb from the get-go. And on the way between Victoria and Houston, I fell asleep somewhere, likely drove several miles because you can... just like a sleepwalker, you're just in the in-between state. But I woke up when I hit the guardrail and the airbag smacked me in the face, and then started taking out more guardrail and rolling and sliding upside down. And I finally came to rest upside down, 30 feet from going down a 30-foot concrete embankment. So it would have been 30 feet sideways and then 30 feet down. It's fine.
I know. Okay, here's the thing. Clint actually talks about this and your other car accident, pretty frequently in a joking manner.
Yeah.
And it always scares the crap out of me and PJ just thinking about it. But I mean, thank goodness you survived and you're okay. Mm-hmm. But do you think, just as advice to people driving, do you think it was just a single bad decision, or do you think it was just poor planning of your schedule?
Yeah, I think in hindsight, it was several things. The schedule was obviously not optimal. And then there was the pride issue, the ego issue, the young mannerism, that went on. I think that I didn't lean heavily on the few things that were said to me. And I think that, a few people had the opportunity to actually stop me, but wanted to let me, because I was a little bit forceful on my decision making as a young man.
I can't imagine.
Yeah. So I think that there was a lot of wrong, and I own it. It was ultimately me. The funny thing is the car was in such bad shape. You crawl out the window and the car's all smashed up, but you crawl out of it and it's 3 a.m. and other people on the highway, because it's a busy highway, saw it happen, but no one stopped. My glasses were destroyed by the airbag piece. Who knows where the pieces were. So I couldn't see very well. It was all bleary eyed. Finally I got someone to turn around and pull around, and they said, I called the cops for you. And I'm, fantastic. And then they left again too.
It's insane.
But I had the phone number of the professor of the class that's going down there for the class with us. And I called, and first the police officers came and checked everything out. And then I called my parents and said, look, I was in an accident. And I think I'm fine. And I think if I can make it to the airport, I can still go. I'm good to go.
There's that pride thing again.
Yeah. And, and also just, you start measuring things wrong. Like, this costs money and I signed up for it. And it's going to be letting me down and them down and all this other stuff. So all the wrong thinking converges. So they asked for the police officer to get on the phone to verify that I wasn't, just shell shocked, which I was. I was very lucid, shell shocked. And the police officer says, yeah, we don't know. He seems to be fine. Absolutely fine. Don't take police officer's word at 3 a.m. in the morning when the kid is in the ditch. But so I called the professor of the class, and turns out they were a few miles behind me when it all happened. So when I called them up, I said, look, I had an accident. I'm in the ditch, but if someone is passing by this way on the way to the airport and they could pick me up, I'm good to go. And turns out, as soon as I was on the phone with them, they were passing by.
No way.
So they looped around, got on the access road. We loaded up the stuff I could dig out of my upside down car, and I went to the airport. And I went to do my 2.5-week class in Mexico. Yeah.
Well, that is a great story for why not to drive tired. So
it's expensive, y'all. If anything else, it's just not efficient use of money.
Prepare yourself. All right. That was all right. Let's move on.
Big digression there.
Wind gusts, high wind.
Oh, this one gets me.
This one gets me so nervous. Especially when it's kind of sudden, where it's not like that constant wind. That constant wind, you can really hold tight onto that steering wheel and kind of get your groove with, I know the wind is blowing this direction. But sometimes you're driving along, you're doing fine. You might, take one hand off the wheel to change the station or grab a drink.
Sure.
And that gust of wind comes, and it is
such a surprise.
So scary.
Right.
So is looking at the weather, looking at wind gust from where you're traveling, something that you do before you hit the road?
I definitely check the weather, but I'm not checking for wind. And maybe that's something I need to start doing. I just check for how hot's it going to be.
Rain, and the normal stuff.
You figure a storm will bring wind. And if there's no storms on there, then it can still be a super windy day. But I don't think that way for some reason. I'm not a smart man.
So what big gust of wind, the thing that, obviously you're afraid of is that one little swerve gets your trailer rocking back and forth. If that starts to happen, if you get a big gust of wind and your trailer starts doing the little tail wag thing.
Yeah. Does the tango?
What do you do?
Really, what you want to do is you want to, in as controlled a manner as possible, start slowing down. But slamming your brakes is almost like it's highly likely to cause a sway to get significantly worse.
It's like seeing a cop when you're speeding. You don't want to slam on your brakes.
No,
you do want to let off the gas.
Yes, it's drawing attention to physics, and physics will make you pay.
You would like to let off the gas and get your hands on that steering wheel, and most of the time, if you catch it like that and you have the proper equipment, the sway control, your brake controller, you got, I mean, it should be okay.
So this is going to feed into some other things we're going to talk about, but your setup matters significantly on how it's going to tow, how your trailer and your rig are going to manage windy situations. And so part of it's the setup, part of it's equipment, like a sway bar, or better yet, a weight distribution hitch. The modern ones don't just do weight distribution; they also mitigate sway to a large degree. But know how to use your brake system. The vast majority of these trailers have electric brakes, and if you can actuate, turn on the brakes on your trailer first before you start bringing in the brakes on the tow vehicle, then that'll actually help to straighten things out significantly. Now, brake controllers typically have a button or a little pressure squeeze lever, something, and that's what you want to do. And you don't want to go slamming your brake on your vehicle. You don't want to be slamming the brakes on the trailer either. You want to, with some level of calm, if you can manage it, just bring on the brakes on the trailer. You might feel it. It'll feel like you're dragging an anchor behind you. Good. Good. That's helping you to be in a straight line.
Yes.
And you can utilize those brakes to slow down the tow vehicle too. So this isn't necessarily the way you want to use the brake system in like curvy mountain situations, but you're more likely to fix the kind of wind gust situations that we're talking about in the Midwest. It's just it's a vast open plains.
You're going straight.
This is where you see 18-wheelers tumping over and all that. Well, you don't want to be in that mix. So choose your time and set up your equipment well, have the right equipment. And if you can slow down the trailer behind you before your tow vehicle, and this works on bicycles too. So I like to bring this up to my kids all the time, or myself. A lot of bicycle accidents happen from people not knowing which brake lever to go for first, and they actuate the front brake before the back brake. And that causes.
Hey, I know what happens there.
Yeah, you go right over the front, and so without the friction on the back wheel and all that already bringing you down, then the friction on the front wheel just becomes it's like a lever, and it lightens the load on the back of your tow vehicle and the hitch and all the way back. So, like on a bicycle, you actually want to use the back brake first. Well, in a high wind situation, use the furthest back brakes first.
Trailer brakes, yeah. Mm-hmm. And this and a couple other things we're talking about on this list that have to do with the brake control. Really, it sounds crazy, but the best way to prepare yourself for an emergency situation before it's actually an emergency is to practice.
Yes.
Drive around your neighborhood and practice pushing the button.
Know what it feels like.
Yeah, to push it hard or to push it a little bit, or to, how fast it works and how it feels, because that's the same thing you do. I mean, you practice stop, drop, and roll when you're a kid, right?
Yeah.
You practice the situation before it's an emergency, and it might sound totally crazy, but it is really the best way. That way, when you get into that situation, you don't have to think. You've already done this. You've done this 100 times driving around your neighborhood. You know exactly what to push, how hard to push it.
Right.
Let's talk about overloaded RVs and unevenly loaded travel trailers. And it's two things on the list, but we're going to kind of combine them because they do the same thing pretty much.
One last thing on the wind gusts.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
If I can. If you have the opportunity to choose back roads versus interstate highways when it's a windy situation, you can usually mitigate a lot of the wind problems too. You might be taking a more scenic route. You might be taking a less open route, whatever. But there's sometimes some trees that break up the wind on those back roads versus interstate. It's largely the easement on the sides is so open and clear and all that. So that, pick your path as well.
It's true. I mean, a wind gust combined with an 18-wheeler passing you on the left is very dangerous. Those 18-wheelers are fighting the same wind gust you are and contributing.
Well, they create a vacuum
to the push and suck.
Yeah, they create a vacuum when they're coming up on you, and then they create a push. So it causes it.
I hate it.
So absolutely. So on to the overloaded and unevenly loaded.
I think, of course, this podcast, you get a little bit different perspective, or at least we try to give you a different perspective, because we literally see these things every day. And when people come to pick up their trailers, we are really big on educating them on how to tow. And part of that is how to load your trailer. A lot of people say, whoa, I had no idea I was supposed to load the heavy things in the front or the back or the middle. Or, that's not something that we talk about. It's not common knowledge. So make sure that you are loading your trailer the correct way. And you can talk to your dealership. It depends on how heavy your trailer is and where the weight in the trailer is. Some trailers have a very heavy tongue weight. All the stuff is in the front of the trailer. And so you're going to distribute the weight differently
by loading further to the back at the axle or behind. So when it comes to loading your setup, your tow rig with your trailer or what have you, I kind of think of in one way, and I'm not going to say this is 100% right. This is how it works out in my brain. You want to, obviously there's tongue weight on a trailer that pushes down on the back of the vehicle and pushes most of the weight down on the rear wheels of your tow vehicle. But if it too much weight down on the rear wheels, it actually lifts some of the weight off of the front wheels, which gives you less of a sure feeling while steering. So you get that floaty feeling. Have you ever had that while towing a trailer?
I have not, but I know what you mean.
It just feels less solid, less secure. So to me, there's the best way, honestly, to do this is to go to a scale and weigh your setup. Pack it out the way you think is right and weigh it, or use an at-home tongue weight scale. That's the right way. Do it scientifically with the maths.
Right.
But if you do have to do it by feel, you can tell if you are too tongue heavy to a degree by how the steering feels. Now, too little tongue weight lifts pressure off of the rear wheels because the tongue of the trailer is pulling up on the hitch. And that's a whole nother traction issue. Most tow vehicles are rear wheel drive. So if your power driven wheels lose traction with the ground, friction with the ground, then it's easy for your rear end to want to scuttle away from you, side to side, or even try to push around the front tires of the tow vehicle. So by feel alone, you can kind of get a sense of, I might be playing a little unsafe here. In which case, like I said, I still think the best way is to do it by the numbers. It's just not always
your trailer.
It's just not always the easiest, most immediate thing to do by the numbers. But there's great little hitches. There's balls that have built-in scales in them, weigh safe and things like that. You can get a fairly cheap from an RV dealership, from Amazon, whatever. You can get a tongue scale.
Yeah.
So there's ways to do this, and don't overload your tow vehicle. And we like to, obviously they sell for the trailer for, this is your GVWR and all that. And you don't want to go up to the bleeding line, and certainly not past the bleeding line of your tow vehicle's actual towing capacity.
What the axle can handle.
What the axles can handle. And you can go on the inside door and figure out, what it's rated for and all that. But remember that rating is for, is for everything in the tow vehicle and attached to it. So if you're adding sandwiches, they weigh something.
Heavy subs.
That's right. If you go to 7-Eleven and get yourself a super duper gulp, that weighs something. If you're used to driving around with your puppy, with your dog, your favorite dog, and suddenly there's a bunch of puppies, each one of those puppies.
All right.
And their food.
We're moving on.
Oh, okay.
We're moving on to speed. Duh, right? Don't speed. It's dangerous.
Yeah.
But this is what causes
so many
majority of the crashes, because you're going too fast. And the thing is, when you're going too fast and one of these things happens, a wind gust, you not being loaded correctly weight wise,
a blowout. Speed
is going to make it go from a kind of crappy situation to a deadly one real quick.
Yeah.
Watch your speed. It's kind of goes back to the tired thing. We know that you want to get there. We know that you have this urgency to start the vacation.
Yeah. And there's even a kind of roadway social pressure.
Oh, totally. Especially when you see somebody else towing something that passes you and you're like, oh, well, in that case.
Yeah.
Pedal to the metal.
There's ego involved, and I don't want the people behind me to be mad at me and stuff like that. I
just feel like none of that is really worth the danger of speeding. Don't speed.
Yeah.
Inexperienced drivers. All right.
Okay.
All right, here's the thing.
Yeah. You do your take first.
How do you be an experienced driver without driving inexperiencedly?
And therein lies, you got to look at it as a process. And the process is, when you're early in your towing game, work on fundamentals, just like anything else. It's skill building. It's getting acquainted.
You remember when you learned how to drive? Pretend like that again.
Yeah. Be cautious. Take it slower. Choose your time to practice. Choose your places to practice. But do practice. don't go out there like I've been driving for 10, 15, 20 years. I know what I'm doing. It's just I'm attaching something to the rear of my vehicle and I'm going to drive normally. It's a very different setup from a physics standpoint, you know?
I mean,
and from a visibility standpoint.
How many people do you know that we hear every day here who say, oh, the first thing I'm doing is going to an empty parking lot and practicing? Or, you know, do you have any classes on how to tow? I mean, practice.
Right. And we want to strike a balance saying, you got this, you can do this. Absolutely. Look at all the people who do this every day. You're one of them. You just don't know it yet. But we want to strike a balance between that. You can do this and you got this, and spend the time. Do the homework.
See, we could do a whole podcast about like the psychology of, we see it every day here, guys. I'm not kidding. Every single day, the psychology of fear when it comes to towing, and like how that fear really helps people become a good driver because they're cautious and they plan
and they're focused.
But that fear can also hold you back. Well, I don't want to go there because I don't know how to drive in the mountains. I don't want to go too far from my house, or I only do pull through sites because I'm scared of backing up. So the psychology of like, are you going to let fear get you prepared, or are you going to let fear keep you from doing things? Well, yeah, you're right. That is a balance, because we want you to be safe and we want you to go do the dang thing, right?
We've seen it a few times where a customer has finally got themselves over the edge. I'm going to do this. They've hyped themselves up to the point and through the point of purchase, which is not the dealership's. The dealership hasn't done anything wrong. We're with you. We want this for you. We want these experiences and this travel and this freedom for you and all that. And if you finally brought yourself to that place, then awesome. Let's help you get in the right trailer. And then we hear a year later that it's just been sitting in their driveway because they lost their hype.
Too scared.
They're too scared to drive around through traffic just to get out of town. They're too scared to back it. And they've lost all that hype and confidence. So I think that if you are one who has to overly hype yourself up, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be a whole new person to take on this experience, you might need to take account of that and say, maybe before I buy the expensive thing, I need to find a community that does this.
And there's so many. That's the thing about inexperienced drivers is at some point, I mean, this might sound really mean, but at some point you have no excuse, right? Like you have no excuse to not do it, because everybody was inexperienced at some point. Yep. Nobody just did this the first time and said, oh, I'm a pro, bring on the high winds. Like nobody. And my favorite thing to tell customers, especially, you know, we get a lot of women in here who are going camping by themselves, and that is what they're afraid of. They're afraid of towing, the unknowns, the high winds. What if it rains? You know, is it loaded well? And what I like to tell them is, you didn't know how to drive at one point.
Right.
You did not know how to push the gas pedal and turn the wheel. But now, I bet you anything, you do it without even thinking, right? You'll go for miles without even realizing, oh, like, this is how you drive.
Some of you do it in your sleep, but don't do that.
And towing it really is the same thing. Driving to me was terrifying when I learned how to drive. I mean,
she's got like a medical issue. She gets nauseous thinking about driving.
It's true, I do. It was terrifying. And now I do it without thinking about it. Towing is the exact same thing, which goes into distracted drivers, which is another terrible thing. So,
oh man,
when I was learning how to drive, my parents got me my first car. Okay, here's the thing. They got to pick it out, but I had to pay for it, which I thought was totally unfair when I was a kid. And now I'm like, that was really
kind of
smart.
the way it was for me.
Yeah,
as well.
that was really smart. So I had
That's old
a
school.
Volvo S40, I think. It was red.
Yeah. It's super safe car. Wow. They went for the safest thing they could find.
Because they know me. They know me, man. But I remember my mom like taking me out and being like, here's your car, you know, and then telling me that her favorite thing about the car was it had a 10-disc CD changer.
So you didn't have to deal with discs.
And it was in the trunk.
Yeah.
Which I had never heard of since. And I've never heard of, since or
those
before
were
that.
The thing, though.
And I remember being furious at my mother. Are you serious? I have to pull into a parking lot and park my car if I don't want to listen to, if I want to change the CDs. Like
how inconvenient.
I am a music person. Okay. I need a selection of more than 10, right? I don't know what I'm going to be in the mood for. So I just remember being furious, and I had that car for years. And I had to pull over if none of those CDs were what I wanted to listen to. And
no one told you that you could change out the stereo deck, the receiver?
Like I had money for that. I was paying for this dang Volvo. So, point is, she was so excited because that meant I could not look through and change my CDs while I was driving, which for all of you youngins listen to this podcast, which I'm sure there are none, is totally a thing when we would flip through our CDs while we were driving, our CD books.
I remember that it was a thing when I was in high school and college that cars would get broken into for the CDs.
When your CDs got stolen, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It was really a blow. So now that I am an adult and I know how to drive and I feel like I'm a very responsible driver, I still will wait until I'm at a stoplight to like change the, push the touch screen to change the podcast or whatever. Yeah. I mean, it's just ingrained in me, and I'm so grateful because distracted driving, I mean, y'all don't need us to be a freaking PSA commercial. It's bad. But when you have, once again, when you have something big and heavy dragging behind you, that one look to the side, I got into a car accident in high school because my best friend was driving and she had just gotten new seat covers. And we had put them in her car, in her Toyota Camry. They were purple and they had butterflies, and we thought they were so cool. And then we put them in her car, and then we were driving down the road not 5 minutes later, and she turned and saw that the seat cover was like wrinkled. So she reached over to pull it down to straighten it. Boom, at 60 miles an hour in front of a stopped car, or ran into a stopped car. It was so I mean, these things happen. I'm sure everybody listening has a story of distracted driving.
And I got to tell you, I do enjoy riding my motorcycle to and from home and all that, but sitting at intersections,
you just see everybody.
Bewildering how many people have their phone in their hand. It's freaking insane how many people have their phone in hand and they're looking at their phone, or they're looking down, not even across the dashboard, at a phone, but it's down or something. I can think of probably 4 intersections on my way to and from work that all I do is see how many people I can count while my light is red. And it's obnoxious and terrifying. It is terrifying
because it's so normal. Yep. Like it's like, that's just what we do. And you know what I think is funny is these cars that now have like, I can literally talk to my car and say, text Clint, I'm going to be 5 minutes late for work. But you know what? I still have to look over at my screen, push the little microphone button, and then I have to talk to it. And then it's going to read it back to me. And then I have to push a button to confirm to send it.
Yeah.
So that's still pretty dang distracting if you ask me.
And if you think about it, it's actually task switching from focus driving to dealing with a text or music or podcast or whatever, and task switching back. It's actually 2 different tasks. And now you're a little bit automated in the driving respect, but your attention is not. Your attention is not automated. So you not only have the time it takes to do the thing, there's a little bit of a lag between switching to that other task and switching back.
I feel like as a society, we feel like we're so good at this. We feel like we're so good at multitasking and we're so good at task switching because that's the way our world is and everything's fast now. And
we've held it up as this virtuous thing is to be good at multitasking.
Look how many things I can do.
But the fact is we're inefficient.
We still have human brains and human brains operate in a certain way.
Right.
So anyway, I feel like we're getting super preachy here, but
preach, sister.
Just be safe, man. Just do it, because you know what? It takes one distracted driver who might not ever make a mistake next to another distracted driver who makes a mistake. And then boom, you're both done.
But it's also, even if you're not a distracted driver, being a slightly amped up, maybe hyper vigilant, looking for distracted drivers.
Someone else is distracted.
So it's not just that you're a distracted driver towing. Let's say you're not. But maybe turn it up a little bit, particularly if you're in an urban area. Or, they tell, looking at some statistics recently, I say urban areas, but the locations that have the most car accidents with fatalities is actually in rural areas. And it's often because it's non-signalized or unmarked intersections and the speeds, and people aren't used to traffic coming through and all that. So every now and then it just catches up. And so let's say you're in a rural area.
Say rural again.
Say you're in a rural area. And I mean, distraction happens out there too. And it may be a phone because everyone's connected now. And it may be a coyote.
I was about to say a cow.
A roadrunner. Moo. Tweety bird.
What else can get me in to a wreck?
Things you don't see.
I'm blind.
And your blind spot.
Man. Sometimes I forget that blind spots are a thing. And then I have one of those near thingies and I'm merges. Oh yeah.
People coming off of a highway onto a feeder road or something like that. And you just don't know that they're there. They're not there and then they're there.
They're not there and then they're there.
Yeah.
So they have those extended tow mirrors, which are really awesome. It is not going to eliminate the problem. You still have to pay attention, but it makes it so much easier when you have a trailer to, catch that blind spot.
Don't rely on technology. Not just yet. Turn
the beep, 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 beep,
your head. And I've run into this several times with, maybe the older generation that preceded me, where I'm seeing a bunch of vehicles on their tailing passenger side corner. People are so immediately just relying on their reverse screen, the reverse camera, that they are no longer physically looking over their shoulder. And those reverse cameras they're great, but they just don't show you everything.
Well, I have to look behind me because I can't look at the reverse camera because it makes me nauseous.
Yeah. See, you're built in more safe that way.
I'm built in safe.
And there's two blind spots. There's a physical blind spot of what you cannot see or see well in your mirrors. And then there's literally a spot in your eye where your ocular nerve attaches to the back of your eye that is a literal blind spot.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. So in your eye, you actually have a blind spot that is decreased, if not completely obstructed. It just doesn't resonate with your brain. So if you're glancing quickly, something like a motorcycle will be right there.
Yeah.
So take a pronounced turn of the head and maybe look over your shoulders and spend a little bit more time. Maybe do the owl thing. When you're using your mirrors, do the owl thing and move your head around.
Oh my gosh. If y'all are not watching this podcast on YouTube, you're missing Clint's weird ass head movements. What do you do? Stop doing that.
I'm owling.
I'm owling out.
That's right. I'm Clinton Owlin Sandberg.
Oh, Lord.
No, Clinton Allen Sandberg, not Lord.
Miscalculated turns and stops.
You cannot treat your tow vehicle like it's not towing. If you are used to driving your truck around without it being loaded up and you're going to hit a corner at the same speed, no, you're not.
No, you're not.
It's not going to respond the same way. Don't do it. And the trailer follows a shorter path around a corner than your tow vehicle, which is why you see big 18-wheelers say makes wide right turns. It's because they have to allow for the shorter turn radius. Smaller turn radius.
How come it doesn't say makes wide turns? How come it's only right turns?
It's more pronounced because if you're in the U.S. and many places, a right turn is a sharper corner. So
why?
Well, stand at an intersection.
Oh, because you're not going out to get on the other side of the lane.
The trailer is going left. The trailer still is taking a shorter path, but it's not as pronounced as, the hop and the curb thing isn't.
That is so funny because I honestly have always wondered that, but I never wanted to ask anybody because I thought it was a really stupid question. I didn't want anybody to know I didn't know, but I decided right here in this microphone is when I would
so we can all get over this with you.
And that makes so much sense. I don't know why I didn't think about it.
But back to the physics of it. You're not the same vehicle when you're hitched up to something or you're burdened or loaded down or there's tongue weight or there's mass behind you that can push you through an intersection. So you cannot think the same way. You have to spend time with your setup and get used to this whole new thing. Consider it a completely different vehicle, even if it looks and smells the same. It's a different vehicle. Well, yeah.
You cannot stop as fast. I mean, and I guess what we're saying here, or at least what I'm saying, is just mentally prepare for that. I know you know this, but when you get into the car to start your travels, it is really good to just think about okay, I need to turn wider. I need to stop slower. Just keep these things in mind, because I think when people hop in their vehicles to go out on a trip, if you don't think about these things, then that's when you can have an accident that you knew better, right? You knew better, right? But you just weren't aware.
Can I add to that?
No.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Okay. Can I add to that it's not just, where your tires are and maybe not just the width of your vehicle, but a lot of people, it's real easy to not understand how much taller a trailer or truck camper might be.
That's true.
And so we see a good number of service department projects in a year of people forgetting how tall their trailer is, or that there's a tall leading edge. And that's another thing. Get your eyes on it and keep it in mind. Maybe put a little Post-it inside your vehicle. I am this tall.
Yes, it's true. We see it way more often than I thought was the case. Yeah. I mean, just the top scraped off, the AC hitting.
Yeah. Air conditioner's gone.
Yeah. I mean, it happens a lot. Parking garages, overpasses, fast food drive-throughs.
And don't trust the sign that tells you that this bridge is, 14 foot 8 inches.
I know we covered this in another podcast. Basically, I think it was our planning your route, but I learned, and I will pass on this info, that they will measure, right? So they measure and then they write on the bridge, or they put the sign up that says, 11 feet, 17 inches or whatever. That's not, there's only 12 inches in a foot. Okay.
This one is 12 foot 5, 11 feet, 17 inches.
Whatever. But then over time, they repave the road. And this can happen several times over 20, 30 years. Yeah. And
they never change the sign.
They're not going to change the sign. So that is no one's job. Yeah. That is no one's job to keep up with that and to remeasure. And, you hope the roadway system people in charge would keep up with that. And I'm sure sometimes they do, but a lot of times they don't. And those things are inaccurate by more than an inch.
Sure. So up to half a foot.
Really?
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
And I mean, considering some of these are really rural places. Rural. And they could resurface several times. Stuff settles, stuff gets resurfaced. And what if there's a bump? And what if you got the clearance of 1 inch, but you hit a bump?
And then you installed that max air fan on top.
That's right.
And you forgot to add a few inches.
Yeah.
Guys, we're totally not kidding. We see this a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. So just figure out how tall you are. That definitely goes with miscalculated turns and stops. And
there are some products out there that can help a lot with this. Now you still have to do your measurements and know it, but I was traveling for a while. I was testing a Garmin product that we had.
Still have that?
I don't. I liked it a lot, and then I talked about it with the customer, and they bought it for me because it was it was here in inventory, so I was just testing it. It was one of the Garmin GPS units. It was actually their overland unit, and the thing was amazing. I know we all have GPS on our phones, and yes, by and large, 98% of the time it does everything we need. But this thing was brilliant for going into, the far reaches of, Southwest Colorado and things like that. It was incredible. Plus, I could put in the length, weight, and height of my rig, and it would plan a route that would make sure I didn't hit trees and I didn't go over bridges where I exceeded the weight limit. And it was incredible using this technology. So there are products like the Garmin products, and there are some other ones. I think TomToms and other have a few units that you can put in your RV specs, and it'll help you to do your trip planning and help you to navigate safely. There you go.
Make it easy on yourself.
Yeah.
All right. We have one more. It's obviously obvious. Don't drive impaired.
And I don't think that most of our listeners, I feel like most of our listeners get the baseline of the alcohol and other things like that. But prescription drugs, that's a real thing. Or maybe not prescription, maybe over the counter, and it's just Sudafed or some for your allergies. If it's Benadryl, I should not be driving if it's Benadryl.
Me neither.
I should barely be walking if it's Benadryl.
I should be sleeping.
Chances are I'm sleepwalking if it's Benadryl.
But these small things that you might not think about can be the difference between reaction time if something happens, or even just being prepared, that thinking, okay, I have something behind me. I need to stop slower. I need to turn wider. If your brain is impaired in any way, then those thoughts might not go through your head. And that's what causes accidents.
Yeah. I mean, so we talked first off is being overly tired. That's an impairment, but any of these other things, and it's allergy season, y'all. I mean, let's say
get hopped up on allergy meds.
Let's say you're not hopped up on allergy meds, but you have a lot of sinus pressure. You know how that affects your thinking and your visual acuteness and all that. You just be aware of yourself for the sake of yourself and others.
The three things that are most common in these accidents, especially with trailers, is you are impaired in some way, you are tired, or you are speeding. And those are all things that you can easily avoid.
There's so much under control that the court of law will bring it up should there be an issue.
We just want you to be safe so you can go camping more. That's all.
Yeah.
These are just things to keep in mind, or things to share with somebody if they are new at towing and you're not sure how to prepare them for it.
Can I add just a bonus?
No.
Okay.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Don't listen to me.
All right. So the bonus is do yourself the favor. You'll feel much more confident if you do routine maintenance on your tow vehicle and your trailer, and you have the proper equipment. Say you're using a sway bar or a weight distribution hitch, a brake controller and all that. You have the proper equipment, and one step further, because the proper equipment is not the proper equipment unless it is properly dialed in and set up. And then go out and practice with the right equipment and the right setup. But this is a big deal. And check your tires. Make sure your tires are healthy and properly inflated too.
Sir.
I'm soapboxing, but
you are this whole podcast
important.
was kind of a soapbox, but I had fun.
But we do it because we love you.
Yeah. It's true.
And we've seen things like check your lug nuts too. I've seen tires.
We could go on and on. We have plenty of podcasts on safety, how to check your lug nuts, how to see if your tires are good, what to look for. All of those podcasts available at rvsmalltalk.com. Yep. Also, our show notes are available at rvsmalltalk.com in case you want to see this article.
Yeah, we'll put it there.
And make a list of your own, a list to check before you leave. Am I tired? It's like, what do you call it? Wallet, keys, phone. This is like am I tired? Am I hungry? Am I drunk? Just a little checklist before you start driving.
Yeah. In the meantime, we have a Tiny Trailer Rally coming up. So whenever you hear this, go immediately over to TexasTinyTrailerRally.com. We currently have how many?
I think 88 trailers coming.
88 trailers coming.
There is room for a couple more. Mm-hmm. So head over to TexasTinyTrailerRally.com. There's a little register button there. So you need to fill out that form. And then you need to call Skyline Ranch RV Park. The number is right there on the site to reserve your spot. There is going to be a solar eclipse during this rally. So it's going to be really, really fun. And also the rally is free. You do not have to buy your RV from Princess Craft. Yep. We don't care how big it is. You just have to love tiny trailers. And it's free. All you do is pay for your reservation at the camp.
Right.
We're going to have some classes for beginners. We're going to have some live music. We're going to have some dancing. We're going to have some lots of food.
Okay.
Lots of food. It's going to be really fun. That is October 11th through 15th. At Skyline Ranch RV Park in Bandera. And if you can't make this one, we have another one in the spring. Mm-hmm. And it is actually a week after the big full solar eclipse. But the park is doing a special. So if you're still looking for a spot to get prime viewing of that solar eclipse,
cannot get better.
Your spot is in Bandera, and they still have spots available. They're saving them for people who are coming to the spring rally. So if you want to do both, you can see the eclipse. You can come to the rally. Bing, bang, boom. We got you covered. Don't worry. We got you, listeners. Mm-hmm. Just check out TexasTinyTrailerRally.com for the details and registration for both of those rallies, fall and spring. I think I'm done talking about the rallies now.
Everybody, thank you for joining us for this episode of the RV Small Talk podcast. We will come at you again soon with maybe some more entertainment, maybe some more information, things to keep us going and inspired, and maybe a little bit safe. And we'll have PJ on when we get her back from Elkhart. Until then, we'll see you next time.
Bye.